connecting Indigenous musicians and artists to the world. Welcome to Indigenous Superstars with your host, Rhonda Head.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show tonight. Welcome to Indigenous Superstars. I'm on show, I believe my guest is, I have my 57th guest on tonight since I started in April during the pandemic. So my show has been expanding. I started off interviewing musicians, and I'm still going to interview musicians. And I started interviewing people from the Powwow Trail. And I'm also going to be expanding my interview to interview Indigenous designers and people, Indigenous people in the film industry and artisans. So it's going to be a real broad area of artists that I'm going to be interviewing, and I'm really excited about that, about doing that, and just excited for all of them to share their amazing journeys and their stories of how they got to how they got to be today. So I just want to give a shout out to Elisa Meaches. She was just recently been given the honor to the Order of Canada. So I want to say a big, huge congratulations to her for all the work that she's done in Indian country in the film and production industry. But she also donated $300 to the Indigenous Superstars because she was so happy that I interviewed her adopted mom, Marianne Patrick, who was really influential in the Powwow Trail, and it was really lots of fun to interview her. She has so many amazing stories to share about dancing and her life on the Powwow Trail, as well as her beautiful beadwork and her work with horses. So thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate the donation because I do this show on a volunteer basis, and I did recently get a grant from Stay at Home Manitoba, and it paid for all the equipment and updated my equipment for the show. So the money will help me pay for my internet and my podcast that I put the shows on, which is the Indigenous Superstars podcast. So you can go check it out on Apple, and it's on iHeartRadio. So subscribe to the podcast, and you'll get to hear some of the awesome interviews that I did with musicians and starting with Powwow people. And tonight I have a real awesome guest. She's from her name is Norma Baker Flying Horse. She's an enrolled member of the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation, a member of the Hidatsa Dakota, Sioux, and Assiniboine tribes. Norma is the owner of the Native American fashion line Red Berry Woman. Red Berry women's fashions are seen throughout Indian country, having been worn by tribal members who represent their indigenous nations, from politicians to pageant contestants, pageant queens, title holders to the film and music industries. Red Berry Women has been featured on international runways such as Vancouver Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, and the runways of New York City. Red Berry Woman was worn on the 2018 Oscar stage by Standing Rock Sioux member and activist Alice Brown Otter during the Andrea Day and Common performance. This event earned Norma the title of the first contemporary Native American fashion designer to have a gown worn on the Oscar televised event. Red Berry Woman was also seen walking the red carpet of the 2019 Grammy Awards. Norma was recently named the International Indigenous Designer of the Year by the International Indigenous Fashion Week. Please welcome Norma Baker Flying Horse. Hey. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you agreed to do an interview with me this evening.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Me too. I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions about how you got into designing and your company. So I'm just going to go ahead and start asking. So what inspired you to get into designing and sewing and creating?
Um, I don't think it was one thing particularly that inspired me. It just something since I was a little girl that I loved fashion. I always tell everybody I was that little girl that bought toy high heels at the at the store. My grandparents would take me. And of course, I grew up admiring fashion icons and just the runway, the in particular the couture, like the Oscars, things like that. I love formal fashions. So of course, growing up on the reservation, we didn't really have a whole lot of money to be splurging on fashion. So it was always something that I really only seen on TV or in fashion magazines. It wasn't ever something that I thought that's what I want to do. I just didn't think that that was a talent that I would have. And where I had learned to sew was actually my cultural background. My mother taught me to sew. My grandmother taught me to bead. I grew up dancing. I grew up in the power circuit. I'm still in the power circuit, So when I'm not doing shows, so it was second nature to create things. It gave me a center. It gave me a sense of calming and peace, and it was therapy, and it still is. So growing up, you have all these people who ask you, what do you want to be when you get older? And I never had an answer for that question. I never knew what I wanted to be. I never knew that it was possible to, go to fashion school and to become a designer and all these things. And I never thought that was for me. I never thought that was something I could obtain. And so it just happened to be that it fell upon me. It feels like something that I was supposed to be doing all this time. And I didn't do it for whatever reason. Growing up, I was always just told, get a good job, pay your bills. My family was never really the type to wear their hearts on their sleeve and say, follow your dreams and things like that, and it was like, follow your dreams as long as they pay your bills. Don't be asking me for
Right.
So there was, I just didn't think that was a reality for me. And so it just happened to be, now I think we're going on about, I want to say about 7 years, maybe 6 years. I'm not quite sure. I've lost track of time. So much has happened over the last few years. It just happened that, there were, I always tell this story and I always give her credit, is Cheyenne Brady. She was Miss Indian World at the time. She comes from our reservation. And so her mother had gotten a hold of me and said, Cheyenne was needing some dresses. She needs some ribbon dresses for all these engagements. She's got speaking engagements to go to. And of course, I was beside myself that Miss Indian World was asking me to make dresses. And if you know Cheyenne, she just is such a down-to-earth, kind-hearted person. She just really is. She doesn't think anything of, how many people know her, admire her, love her. She's just grateful to have, support from so many people. And she's a beautiful person. And so here I was, though, feeling like I got asked by a celebrity to make dresses. And of course, they're simple ribbon dresses, and I was on travel that weekend because I was actually working for the tribal government at the time. And I said, I wanted to make this dress so bad that I went and I bought supplies while I was on the road, and I stayed at a girlfriend's house in Montana. And I said, you got to help me make this dress because I don't want to mess this dress up. It's Miss Indian World. So, of course, I was real meticulous about the measurements and real meticulous about all, how the ribbon's laid. Now, anything I make for myself, it's usually like 2 hours before grand entry. And I'm like, it's half sewn. We're good. Let's go. But I was being really meticulous on her dress. And so she wore it. And of course, her mom called me and said, she loves the dress. Would you be willing to make more for other events? And I thought, well, it's ribbon dresses are very simple, although beautiful. They're very, very simple at the time. And so I thought Miss Indian World, she's seeing so many non-native people, it'd be wonderful to kind of incorporate like some design work or some ledger work or something. And she said, I have to be at a rodeo. And so well, there you go. So horses. So we put horses on the next dress. And then after that, it was a design, and it just kept going. And then social media had just picked up on it. Like, look at what Cheyenne's wearing. Look at this ribbon dress. So I ended up getting a lot of phone calls. A lot of people were asking me to put design work on, shirts, things like that, to kind of indigenize, their clothing that they were going to these events for. Now, I'm not saying I invented native fashion, indigenous fashion. I am not saying that. What I'm saying is that at the time, I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't realize there had been people doing this, mostly down south. Not too many people up here in the north, maybe more into Canada, I believe. Like Disa Tutusis is she's actually the sister to my aunt-in-law. So I grew up knowing her, and I had no idea she had gone to fashion school, and she's, she herself is an amazing designer. And so I just started looking into more of these fashions, and it clicked. Why not? I'm somebody who loves fashion. I love dressing people, getting them ready for events, things like that. And of course, my background being, that I knew how to sew and bead, and I do some quilling, but I'm not very good at it. So I haven't really practiced much in it. So yeah, so that's kind of how I didn't really go after it. I always kind of regret that I didn't when I was younger, but it kind of just became me. Somehow, some way, it just became who I am. And so when I started doing more design work for more people and putting things out there, I got phone calls. Would you want to be in a fashion show? Yeah, let's do it. I had no idea how to be in a fashion show. I had no idea what to expect, but I was willing to do it. Tell me how many dresses I need. Let's do it. So, and that was it. Red Berry Woman was born, and we ran off down the runway, and it's been going without me, with or without me, ever since. So that's kind of how it came to be.
That's amazing. And I know that the indigenous fashion shows, that fashion designers and fashion shows, it's just like it's exploding right now. And the designs that the designers are creating are so beautiful. And and I've seen photographs of your dresses too that you've made. They're so pretty and beautiful, and they're indigenized and so like classic dresses, and I just love them. And I'm gonna order one from you because I'm a singer, right? And I always wear gowns too, so I'll be ordering one.
Yeah, you're exactly who we design for. So and it's
for sure.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think that indigenous fashion. Sorry if I know some people say indigenous. I'm still used to saying native fashion just because it's something I'm used to hearing, but I really, and it's not just Native Americans, not just indigenous people from Canada. It's all types of races that are, you can see they're incorporating their cultural background into their everyday wear, and it's so cool to see because it's like you get a history lesson, a cultural lesson every time you see somebody who does something like that. And so I think right now, like I said, this has always been happening before me. This has happened before me. People have been doing this stuff before me. But I think where I'm fortunate is somewhere along the way, somebody was like, you know what? We've had enough. We're going to remind everybody that we're still here. And
Right.
it just, for some reason, I feel like in the last few years, our tribal people are really starting to find their voice, and they're starting to use it, and they're starting to, maybe it's social media that we feel so connected, or I don't know, but I feel like everybody can connect in some way or somehow, even if you're just a decent human being who believes people should have rights. I think that there's that connection. And I think people aren't afraid any longer to say that they're a tribal person, that this is where they come from. And I know growing up, my grandparents would tell me stories where both of them had gone to boarding school and they were beaten for speaking their language. They were both fluent speakers, and having long hair and dressing they had to dress a certain way. So that wasn't too long ago. Those were my grandparents, my mother's parents. And I think that generation, was really told that they weren't allowed to be proud of who they were. And now it's, this generation is saying, you know what? No, that's not going to happen. We're going to stand up here and we're going to be damn proud of who we are. So I think that is where, when I get to dress somebody, I'm all excited because, it's people who are getting to do these remarkable things. And it's such an honor to have something, complete something for them, and they wear it. And I feel like I'm part of that moment with them. And it makes you so proud. You haven't just created a garment. You're making a statement. You're sending a message. You're reminding people that we are a beautiful, strong nation, and we are still here. So I feel like that's everybody's kind of feeling like that. That feels like the vibe lately, is that people are wanting to really represent where they come from, who they are, and be proud of that. And that's so awesome. It's awesome.
Yes, that's for sure. It's so empowering too that we're all finding our voices and we're not afraid to speak out or to take ownership of our space.
Right.
And we belong here, and they're going to know we belong here.
Yes.
Yeah, we're all awakening. And it's wonderful to see, and especially with your creations and the musicians and the powwow people. It's such a great. I think our nation is so beautiful.
Oh, yes. And then I've done a few shows up in Canada, and oh my gosh, it's the people, the land. It's beautiful. Of course, I grew up going to Canada every summer. My mother's best friend is from Carry the Kettle. So of course we hung out and carried the kettle. Yeah. So, and it was one powwow, even the midweek powwows. I couldn't believe you guys went to powwows in the middle of the week. That just blew my mind. And I never wanted to leave Canada. I don't think we did. We would go up there for months, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure we need a green card by now. But yeah, so I loved it growing up, among powwows up there, and the culture and the different people. And of course, some of my very good friends are from Canada, and it wasn't really until I got older and I started traveling as a designer that I didn't realize the struggles that a lot of the nations in Canada really face. I mean, it just, I felt like I learned something every time I went up there. I learned something new. And I remember one time I was in Vancouver Fashion Week, and I went to go get my hair done, of course, before the show. Of course, that didn't help me, of course, afterwards. So it was not even worth it. But while I was there, the gal says, "What are you here for?" So I start telling her, and I tell her that I'm an Indigenous designer. And she's like, "Oh, you're Indian." No, I'm not Indian. I'm actually Native American. I'm from the States, but I'm here for Vancouver Fashion Week. I said, so, and I'm pretty sure they don't care to be called that. And she's like, "Oh, we always call them that." And I'm like, that doesn't make it right. So, I mean, it just blew my mind how a lot of people just didn't have that, that courtesy, or that, like, why aren't you asking more questions? Why are you just labeling somebody something that they don't care to be labeled, and then just leaving it at that, So So of course,
Yeah.
me, I'm all like, that's probably why my hair didn't look good after that appointment, because I got all righteous with the salon. My friend's
Oh my
like, what are you
goodness.
doing? Just shut up. And of course, I don't look like the typical native, so they're probably like, what is, I look like a typical white girl is what I look like. And of course, here I am getting all righteous about native rights and indigenous rights. These white women were probably like, what the hell is wrong with this lady?
So where did you come up with the name Red Berry Woman for your company?
It's actually my native given name. So I've always been taught, and I've always believed that our names, that of course there are names, and I think it's wonderful when people decide to go by their native given name, you know, and they change it. I think that's wonderful. Of course, I don't have to legally change it. I literally get identified as Red Berry Woman now. So but of course, I'm named after my grandfather, and of course, I could never see myself changing my name, because of course I miss him dearly, and he always was somebody I really admired and looked up to. So so my name is Red Berry Woman. I really believe that our names have a connection. They give us a connection to this world, to the spirit world. We always say when you leave this world, it's your native name that they say. And it's more than a name. It carries who you are, and you know, and how, you know, how you're going to move through life and whatnot. If you give it that power, you know. So I've always felt that Red Berry Woman was a really strong name, and I was really blessed to have it. And I just felt that there was no other name I could even think of naming, you know, my company. It just had to be something that I felt spiritually connected to. So plus I'm not very creative.
You're very creative. Your dresses are beautiful.
When it comes to names and things like that, I am not creative. I tell you, I could never make a prank phone call to save my life, because I'm not creative at all with names.
So how many garments do you need in a collection when you're getting ready for a fashion show?
It really depends on what the producer is looking at as far as time-wise. And how many designers they have coming to the table. I know in the bigger shows that I've done, like you know, the Vancouver Fashion Week and Atlantic City Fashion Week, you actually pay a fee, depending upon how many, you know, outfits you are going to show, and what it's a package is what it is. And so what comes with that package is, you know, the media, how many models you're given, and then of course, you know, like all the perks, whatnot. But what that package does is it helps the producer pay for the models who come to model, and the staff who come to help run the show, your DJ, you know, it pays those expenses is what it does. So I think when you know, if you're Chanel or somebody like that, of course, you don't need to attend other people's fashion shows. You have your own, and people want to be part of yours. So it's kind of like you are paying your dues to get your stuff out there, you know, and get people to see what you're making and what you have and things like that. So but there's a lot of shows you also have to apply for these shows. You have to submit an application. You have to show them your social media, what you have going on. And then they decide if they're going to have you or not. So, of course, I went through that whole thing, or crossing my fingers, you know, filled out applications, did fundraising. You know, I went to Paris and we did a lot of fundraising for that. And I was accepted into that show, which was amazing, because I didn't show with the Indigenous Fashion Week. I showed with Fashion Week Studio, which is a fashion company that's based out of California, but they show in various countries. So that's who I ended up showing with. And I loved it because for me, it was being able to show people what we have culturally, like being, there were so many people who were responsive to it. They wanted to know, like, what's the beadwork, what's the bones, like what were the things I had on my dresses, and what did they mean, and it was nice. It was really nice to see that there were people out there who, and that's what fashion is really. People who are into fashion is that you want to learn. You want to learn, like, why things are done the way that they're done, and does it mean a special meaning? And it's not just Indigenous people that have meaning behind their designs. It's every fashion designer. When they put something into creating something, they put their heart into it. They put a piece of themselves into it. So to be able to show at a non-Indigenous, non-Native show among people who, they are used to seeing, the couture dresses, the beadwork, all of that, but they're not really culturally identifiable. They're just they're gowns. So they're beautiful, but they don't have a particular background to them. So to have people say, I loved your set, I loved your part of the show, I loved the seeing the dresses, and then have all these questions. I don't claim to know everything. I don't claim to know a whole lot. I'll tell that to people right away. I'm like, I will show you which books you should read, but I'm not going to sit here telling you about every little cultural piece because it's different for everybody. It's different. So, how we're
So
talking.
I'm gonna show a clip from one of your last fashion shows before COVID hit, and that was one of your show. That was a show in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, that was in last February. Atlantic City Fashion Week.
Brickberry woman. This is what you came for. And everybody's watching her, but she's looking at you.
Yay. That was so beautiful.
Thank you. That show always gets me because I was actually a few months pregnant with my daughter Cameron in that. So I always say that she got to be on the runway with me
Oh,
during
that's
that show.
awesome. That's
So
awesome. So for sure, I'm going to be ordering a dress from you. Your
yeah,
designs are beautiful. Oh my goodness.
thank you. I did not pick the hairstyles on that show. I just want people to know that. So that the producer picks the hairstyles and the makeup and all that, and every designer who, because of course these models they wear several dresses during the show, they have to wear the same hairstyle, and I just it was the first time that I had to dress models who had hairdos like Cindy Lou Who on Whoville. It was nuts to me, but that's fashion though. I mean, like that's, you know, people take risks and they try different things,
Right.
and unfortunately with my stuff though, it doesn't really correlate when I have those types of hairstyles and whatnot, so it doesn't really go with what I show.
But your dresses stole the show. They're so beautiful, and I was so proud to see your designs come down the runway, and every dress was breathtaking, and you're very talented, and so where can the audience member find where can they find you?
Well, I have my own website. It's redberrywoman.com. I have been posting a lot of, right now, a lot of jewelry sales, just kind of getting into the whole swing of things because I was working full time for my tribal government up until November. So now that I'm doing Red Berry Woman full time, we're catching up. We're trying to get everything out there and posted and whatnot. I know I have shows coming up I was invited to quite a bit of shows coming up in February, March. I was invited back there to Atlantic City. It's a little difficult to commit right now just with COVID and everything. So I try to keep people posted on my website as to where I'm going. Of course, Facebook, you can find me Redberry Woman. Instagram, you can find me Redberry Woman. So I try to keep everybody as posted as I can. And then, of course, my gowns will soon be, by the end of February, we're going to have everything posted onto the site that I have in stock. Even with the pandemic, I have people who are calling me and, you know, needing gowns and whatnot, even if it's just a virtual event. So we're making it work. And then this spring, we're looking at launching my first ready-to-wear line. I've never been a ready-to-wear designer. So it's kind of a new territory for me to make, you know, things that, you know, you can just put on in the morning, go to work, things like that. So it's a lot of work. I've never gone to school for any of this, and you know, most times it's just me, and then me, you know, calling my mom or calling my best friend, you know, and so I'm really grateful for the people I have in my life because they're helping me make this work and move forward. And of course, you know, I've gotten this far, so why not? We're just going to keep moving ahead. So hopefully this spring I'll have a for sure date closer to, you know, probably closer to February. That should be a lot of work, exciting. So I'm excited for it. It will be in dedication.
Around the corner.
Yeah, it's going to be in dedication to my daughter Cameron, who I lost back in June. I lost my daughter. She survived 23 days, and then she passed away from trisomy 18. So we will be having my first ready-to-wear line will be, of course, dedicated to her, and so we're trying our best to make that, you know, happen and make it a success. So moving, but you know, got to move forward, got to keep going. You know, that's, you know, with the pandemic going on, and then of course grief. It's it can get you. But I promised my daughter I would keep going. I would keep moving forward, and regardless of what happens, it just fashion hasn't failed me yet. I've gone to some pretty amazing places, met amazing people. I'm blessed beyond measure. So I'm just looking forward to this pandemic being over, and then all of us getting back to getting to see one another. Because of course it's wonderful we're able to do things virtually, but getting to see one another and visit and have coffee together and whatnot, it's definitely something us natives are craving.
Sure. I want to go, when you go back to New York, I want to go see your fashion show in New York.
Yeah, I'm going to be showing in September there with Fashion Week Studio again, but I'm also going to be showing with Indigenous Fashion Week because I won the International Designer of the Year from that company. So with that award, I've been offered a spot with their show in New York, and I believe that is September. So I love New York. I've been there so many times, and it's amazing. So
it is. So please let me know when you're going to go there.
Yes.
I'll buy a dress from you. I'll try and get a gig at the same time there and hang out, and I'll perform, and you'll do your fashion show.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Shows have always been so business for me, but at this point, after going through the pandemic and losing my daughter, and my husband's a DJ, and we've always try to do the fashion business. It's always business. We don't ever seem to really enjoy ourselves.
Right.
But
I'm gonna send you some of my music that I recorded. I did it for Indigenous fashion shows, and then the pandemic happened. So I'm gonna send. I know, but it's really it's my music, and it's I created beats for it for fashion show. So I'll send them to you for consideration for your fashion shows.
I appreciate that. I really envy people who have a musical talent, because Lord knows I used to sing when I was younger, and that's about it. And I couldn't put, notes together to save my life. But that is one thing that I really rely on people who have, like you, who have that ability, that talent, because when I'm on the runway and we have to have our own music because of copyright issues, I really rely on people who are from the Indigenous community, because they get it. They get that, we're part of this contemporary, event, yet at the same time, we want to make that like fashion. We want to make it, representational of where we come from. So I really appreciate Indigenous singers, songwriters. You guys are amazing. The stuff you guys come up with is just it's beautiful. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I want to thank you for being on my show this evening, and I'm excited for up and coming designers to hear your story, and thank you for sharing your story and how you became a designer. And so sorry for the loss of your daughter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And
thank you for having me. I'm always so excited to get to visit with people, and it's always such an honor. I always say this: it doesn't matter who it is, or I think it's wonderful you have the show going, and you're spotlighting all these people, and it's great. It's wonderful. That's one thing that you can always find in the Indigenous community, is that we all really want to support one another, because these things that we do, it's a win for all of us. It's a good towards all of us. So thank you for having the show, and I appreciate you asking me to be on it. It was such an honor, and I hope we get to meet soon in person. So
New York for sure.
Yes.
Pray for New York.
Wear your mask so we can
yes.
go dark.
Yes, wear your mask, social distance, and hand sanitize.
Yes. So.
And next week we have country crooner Jerry Soretta and Paulo fancy dancer legend Irene Oak. So I'm looking forward to interviewing them next week. Eguse.
Tune in again next time when Rhonda interviews another up-and-coming Indigenous superstar. Only on Indigenous Superstars.